So a little introduction about our guest speaker, Lance Miller. Lance is an international speaker, trainer, and coach. He has delivered over 5,000 presentations in more than 60 countries. He is a distinguished Toastmaster and has completed 2 Advanced Communicator Gold Awards and 32 Competent Communicators, and completed 2 Pathways Level 5s. Wow, that's quite a lot. He has won both the Speech Evaluation Contest and Table Topics Contest in his district a whopping 3 times. He has held numerous officer positions at district and club level. In 1999, he was instrumental in building his home club, Renaissance Speakers, to 95 members and earned the number 4 club ranking in Toastmasters International. That club has continued to be one of the top clubs in Toastmasters for the last 21 consecutive years. In 2005, Lance earned the title of Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking. He has developed the Championship Club series of training materials to help Toastmasters understand how to build their clubs, lead their clubs, promote and market their clubs, and keep members winning with effective evaluation speeches. In this session, you'll discover lessons and hard-won knowledge he has gained in developing his speaking through Toastmasters, with a session entitled Mastering Your Speech. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to welcome distinguished Toastmaster and 2005 World Champion of Public Speaking, Lance Miller.
Okay, great. Yeah, I want to share with you today some of the lessons that I learned in my journey of what I really call finding my voice, which my journey to the World Championship was really not so much a journey of speaking as a journey of self-discovery and self-realization and realizing what my messages were for the world. And like a lot of Toastmasters, when I started speaking, I would stand up and I would try to say things that I thought the audience would want to hear. I would try to say things that I thought the audience would find were important. They weren't necessarily my messages. And my first point I want to go over is the importance in speaking, and when we look at the competitions too, the importance in being authentic in your message. And what I mean by authentic, the word authentic comes from the same root word as the word author, which is the creator. And so this is our message. It's authentic to us. And it's something that we basically believe. And it has to do with our lives. And for years, when I was competing, when I did my speeches in my Toastmasters Club, when I wasn't competing, I would just talk about what I wanted to talk about. Then the competition would come and I would go, oh my gosh, I've got to come up with this really big, important message that's going to rock the world. And I would talk about something, I'm over here and the message is over here. And it's totally disconnected, disrelated with me. And to show you how bad this was, I mean, I was not a bad speaker, but I lost the international speech competition for 9 years, or the 9th year, 8 years, at my home club. And part of that was I had a really big, good club. The club contest many times was bigger and more difficult than the district competition, because I would have sometimes 12 or 14 people in my club contest, and they were good speakers. But the biggest thing was I was trying to come up with something that I thought would wow the audience, and I wasn't being authentic to myself. And the first year I won the international speech competition at my club level, I was driving to the club. I'd written the speech. I was sitting in the passenger seat of my car, and I stopped at a stoplight, and I was looking at it, and I went, I don't want to give this speech. I thought, I'm going to lose the contest anyway. I might as well talk about something I want to talk about. And in my mind, I just rewrote another speech going to the club. And I got in there, filled my paperwork out, sat in the back of the room and sort of diagrammed out my speech. And I got up and I said, I'm going to lose the competition. I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about and make, hopefully my time with you today is this valuable. I'm not going to win the contest, because year after year, I just didn't even place. That year I won the contest. And I always say, if you want to win the speech contest, speak like you're going to lose. Don't speak to win. Speak like you're going to lose. Because my mindset was, I didn't care if I won or lost. What I cared about was giving the audience an authentic message about something I cared about. And that's where the real connection started to happen with me. And that was when I actually went, oh, what happened here? After all these years, of losing, all of a sudden I just get up and I sort of say what I felt in my heart, and I win the speech contest. And I started to tap into this whole authenticity issue. And what I've done over the years is, over these 13 years of competing, I wound up asking myself a whole series of questions, which I'm going to show you how you can get those. But it was, like I said, it was really discovering, what did I really want to say? And to me, the hardest thing in Toastmasters, the hardest thing in public speaking, is to just be yourself and talk to the audience. And what happens is, and I went through this, we get up in front of the stage and we become somebody different. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see this person in the hall and there's this, oh, hi, you're just nice, genuine individual. And they get on stage and they're going, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, how many times will you? You know, they turn into an entirely different person when they're on stage. And that's not authentic. But let me tell you where I come from on this, and why I think all human beings struggle with this is that most of our life, we've been told what to do. Now, let's just see if you had the same experience I did. Did anybody in the audience grow up in a family? Okay, most of you did. I got a few orphans out there, but when I was a kid, I had all this creativity, but I learned that life was a lot more enjoyable if I was aligned with my parents versus being perpendicular with them, right? When mom and dad would say, don't run around the house and yell, I learned life was a lot more enjoyable if I didn't run around the house and yell. And there was a point where I started to do something or say something, and I would look at my mom and dad and go, what would they do or say if I did that? And that determined whether I did it or not. Now I'm going to ask you, did you ever have that experience? Because most human beings I've talked to have had that experience. At that point, who becomes the author of our thoughts and actions? Us or our parents? To a certain degree, our parents do, because we want to keep the authorities or the big people happy, because it's painful when we don't. Then I went to school. And what I learned was I would progress in my school if I sat in the seat at the right time. I studied what somebody else figured out and I was supposed to learn, and I didn't speak out and have a problem. If I did what I was told and did what the teacher said, I got to progress. And so for 16 years, quite honestly, because I went through 4 years of college, I did what everybody said, and I got to succeed if I did what the authority said. Then I got a job, and they said, great, come in here, sit down here, do the work, don't rock the boat. If we like you, we'll promote you. And so what happens is, like a lot of people, and I was less than a lot of people, we wind up turning over our creativity, our authenticity to authorities in our life, wanting them to give us the approval to move forward. Okay. Now that's what I saw. So when we go to Toastmasters and we stand up on the stage and we say, just be yourself and talk to the audience, it's like, who the heck am I? My whole life I've been trying to make big people happy. So there's a journey we go through where we have to really figure out who we are. At least I'm going to say I had to go through that. What are my message? What do I really believe in? Not what have I been told I need to believe in? What have I experienced? What have I really believed in? And when I started to figure that out for myself, I started to have speeches that bit and connected with the audience. And I started to change. I touched people's heart and I changed their mind, because I was finding my heart and finding my mind. And that's the beauty of what I really feel that Toastmasters gives us. Like I said, it gives us this place where we can mess up all we want. And we don't get fired. We don't get our pay cut. We get a pat on the back and thumbs up. We'll see you next week. Okay. So with that, what is it that you really want to say? What is it that you have learned about life? And how do you want to improve the lives of the audience? The value of your speech is how long does your message resonate in the hearts and the minds of the audience after they hear it? Now, there are people who we have heard in our lives that we carry their messages with us for years and sometimes for our entire life. I'm sure all of us have had experiences where somebody said something to us and we carry that message with us through the rest of our life. That is something that meant so much to us. It helps us so much because that person said it to us. There are other people that speak and it's like they have a self-erasing speech. We can't remember the word "the" after they said it. Okay. And so the impact I know I have on the audience is how long will my message last? And it's interesting because I've given talks and people have never mentioned them again. And then I've given other talks in a lot of my competitions. My regional competition speech, which could have been a world champion speech, it was a really great speech. To this day, I have people come up to me and tell me about how that speech changed their life. And of course, with my world champion speech, I go all over the world and I get a cha-chink. I get, people, validating me, talking to me about it. I get emails probably a dozen a month on people saying that that made such a difference for them. And that makes such a difference for me, knowing that it made a difference in somebody else's life. So with that, what we're looking at is finding messages that are authentic to us. That is where the sweet spot is in the competition speeches. But it's not really about competition. It's really about touching people's hearts and changing their minds. On my website, which I'll put it on the chat if you haven't seen it, I have what's called a speaking tips card. And on the back of this tips card, I have 10 questions that I ask myself over the 13 years that helped me sort of figure out who I was. And it started with, what's my story? What's my philosophy of life? What are the defining moments in my life? And that's a whole other talk that I go into. But these were messages that these were questions, that I didn't have the answer to, but I would ask myself, what is the answer? And it took me sometimes months to figure that out. But as I figured it out, I started to discover more and more who I was and where I lived, what I believed in, what the principles in my life were that I lived by. And that then gave me solid messages to speak to the audience on. But not only that, it changed my life tremendously. Okay. There's another thing I talk about believing your message, and this ties into this thing. We're not just saying words. When we speak to an audience, I don't care if you call it emotionally or spiritually or mentally, we embody our message. We are our message. It's not just the words we say. We're not putting vibrations out and letting air flow through and hit the eardrum. That's not what we're doing. You have to believe your message. You have to really feel that this message will make a difference in the life of the audience, and you're interested in telling it to them. And there's something I talk about a lot is our life force, our life energy. And this is something that I see it's taken out of almost every management system I've been in, coaching system. You'll talk about structure and mechanics and stuff like that, but we all have emotional, spiritual life energy. And you know what I'm talking about. When people come stand on stage, they're alive. And you've met other people and they're like, hi, what's going on? They have no energy in them. That is not physical cell blood coursing through our veins energy. That is what we emanate into life. That is us. That is our spiritual, our emotional energy. And when we believe something, and when I coach people, I'll find it. We're going along coaching them, and all of a sudden we'll find the message you really want to say. And I watch that person come alive with their life energy, or I call it their life force. And when you give your message, you need to have that life energy there and believe it so that you can drive that message through to your audience. I think. So moving on here, let's talk just a little bit about messages. One of the things I want to talk about, your message needs to be clear, and it should be 5 to 7 words clear. It should be very short. The message that you're going to give the audience, especially in a competition speech, is a short, crystal clear message. And the clearer the message, the more power that message will have. And I'm just going to say, let's just use this as an example. If I say the word chair, that's a 5-letter word. You know immediately what I'm talking about. If I say, well, it's a wooden thing, it's got a platform and 4 sort of legs on it, and they've got a structure, then it's got these other platforms that come up on the back, and you can sit down on it when you're tired, and you can rest yourself on it, and it's about this far off the ground. That's the same thing I said, the same message, but I said it in that time, I don't know, let's say 50 words. The power of those words gets diluted across 50 words instead of chair, which is 1 word. So when I'm working with people on their messages, and what I learned was it needs to be crystal clear in our mind. So, and regardless of how clear the message is in our mind, it's going to be less clear in the mind of the audience because it's going to be transferred. So if it's confused in our head, the audience does not have a chance. So you have to make sure you have a really crystal clear message that you want to give the audience. And it should be a short and concise message. The next thing on your message, it should be 1 message. And a lot of speeches I see, and I used to do this, I would have 2, 3, 4, 5 messages in the speech. All this information I want to give the audience. Well, the same thing's true. If you have X amount of power that you're pushing forward to the audience with 1 message, now all of a sudden you have 5 messages. You have to spread that power across 5 messages and hope they get it. That 5 messages impacts the audience. Well, none of those messages are going to have the same power as the full amount of power you can put behind 1 message. In a 5 to 7 minute speech, you should have 1 crystal clear message that touches the heart, changes the mind of the audience. And this takes some work to get down to. Another point on messages I want to share with you is, and I just did I do a weekly video speaking tip, and I just did one of this. I go, it's not about the cancer. And I see this all the time where people want to put cancer, or they got fired, or they had a bad relationship, or they went bankrupt. They had some catastrophe in their life. And they want to talk all about the catastrophe and how they persevered about that catastrophe. And I said, it's not about the cancer. It's not about the catastrophe. It's about what did you discover in yourself that allowed you to overcome what seemed to be an insurmountable barrier. And again, that barrier could be that you were fired unjustly, or you had a very bad relationship, your spouse was cheating on people, or whatever. It was a horrible situation you got into. You were in an automobile accident and you were severely injured, or you had a death, morbid disease. But the warning I give people, especially, I'm just going to digress on this for a second, especially using cancer. If I ask the question, how many people in the audience today, not yourself, but you know somebody who's had cancer, all the hands will go up. And I'll say, how many people know someone you lost that had cancer? Most of the hands go up. I've lost 2 family members to cancer. One of them lived in my house and was my mother-in-law, and we were the primary caregivers for her. When you say cancer, I think of my mother-in-law. I don't think of you. So that's why I'm very cautious about using things like this in a speech. It's not about the disease. It's not about the catastrophe. It's about what you discovered in yourself that allowed you to overcome that catastrophe, because you want to give something to the audience that will allow them to overcome whatever catastrophe or insurmountable barrier they have. And that barrier is going to be different than your barrier. But what you found in yourself can still get them through it. So in message selection, that's one of the things that you want to look at. Let's look at a couple things on delivery. There's a big difference between speaking and acting. In speaking, I'm talking to you all the time. I'm never talking to someone else. I'm always talking to you. In acting, we drop a 4th wall. Now, there's a wall behind me, but there's a wall over here and there's a wall over here. The 4th wall is between me and the audience. And I drop a 4th wall and I speak to someone else on stage, and I invite you in to observe the conversation, but I don't acknowledge the fact that you're there. In speaking, we're always talking to the audience. A very good friend of mine, and he's been in the finals in the World Championship, named Carl Walsh, is a Shakespearean trained actor. And he actually summed it up best for me. He said, in acting, you're playing off the other actor. in speaking, you're playing off the audience. That is the person who is the other person you're playing off of. So when I see people that will do things on stage that, you know, they'll get in an argument with somebody, or they'll get a phone call and just receive the message that their father or their son was killed or something like that. And I've seen this in the finals of the World Championship. The person collapses completely on stage and cries. Now, the fact is, they're trying to have an emotional impact on the audience, but in that moment, talking with the audience, they did not receive that phone call. It wasn't the first time. It went into a complete acting mode. So the simplicity here is you're always talking to the audience. If you want to have a conversation with someone, you can have a little dialogue and say, well, I went over and I talked to my mom and I said, Mom, you know, why is it that you always are up at 5 o'clock in the morning? Well, she looked at me, but I'm telling you that story. I'm not going, Mom, why is it you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning? And then I go, well, son, the reason I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. See, now I've flipped into an acting mode because we're going back and forth. I'm inviting you into the scene. Okay. Dialogue is always talking to the audience. Another point here is telling the audience what to think versus sharing your story with the audience. It's a delivery message that you get. Now, we've been told what to do since I already mentioned this, since we were little kids. We're always being told what to do. Plus, we get hit with advertising probably 1,000 times a day telling us what to do. My viewpoint is people have a built-in resistance to being told what to do. And I see speakers do this over and over and over again. They will give a story about their speech, and then they'll tell the audience that this is what they need to do based on their speech. There's a disconnection that happens when you start telling the audience what to do because you don't know who's in that audience. And this has happened to me time and time again. I would be talking to some group and some guy comes up and hands me his book of when he climbed Mount Everest. Or I had a 70-year-old lady come up and said she just finished her 4th Boston Marathon. She's 70 years old. I thought it was just a little old lady sitting in my audience. You don't know who's in the audience. You don't know what their problems are. You don't know what their experience is. You don't know what their the lessons they've learned in life already. So to tell the audience what they need to do to be successful or what they need to do in their life is really disrespectful to the audience. Share what you found to work. Share what you feel we need to do. Share what you feel makes a better world, what you try to do in your life. Share your message versus tell the message, because when you tell the message, you try to be the smartest person in the world, in the room. And I'll tell you, that has never been the case when I've spoken. I've never been the smartest person in the room. The last thing on this, the delivery I want to touch on is being sincere versus trying to be sensational. Now, there was one speaker that was in the finals time and time and time again. And one time he never, I think he got 2nd or 3rd once or something like that. But one time he was in the semifinals and I watched his speech and it was this great speech. And all of a sudden in the last 2 minutes of the speech, he goes into this whole thing about getting, this whole sensational aspect of it. And I talked to him, he didn't place. And I talked to him, I said, why did you do that? He goes, Lance, I've got to be sensational. They won't remember it. Well, here's the question that I'm going to ask you. Who determines if the speech is sensational? You or the audience? The audience determines if the speech is sensational. You don't determine if it's sensational. And a sincere speech, sincere comes from the root word clean. It means I don't have any other ulterior motives. I'm just telling you my story. I'm real honest with you. Those are the sensational speeches. So it's more important to be sincere than try to be sensational, because as we try to be sensational, we start to lose the authenticity in ourselves and we start to disconnect with the audience. A couple other points I just want to share with you. And this is something I see in India and the Middle East a lot. And that is asking questions in the middle of your speech. People will go along in the middle of the speech and then they'll be telling some story and they go, has that ever happened to you? What do you do when this happens? And I go, wait, you're in the middle of a story. Then all of a sudden you break the story and you ask me a question. I have a thing. I never want to ask a question in a speech I can't get an answer to, because I want to control the attention of the audience. And the perfect speech, the audience's attention is 100% on me, and my attention is 100% on the audience. Now, here's a question for you. Have you ever been timer and forgot to time? Okay, what happened was you're so involved in the speech, you all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, and in my club, all of a sudden, this happened to me a number of times. I'm speaking and I'm going, I haven't seen a green card yet. I go, I got the speaker's attention, and they're like sitting there listening to my speech, and I'm going, I got to start wrapping it up, or all of a sudden they start going green, yellow, red, like 5 seconds apart. Oh no. What happened is I got their attention. When you ask, so if you look at this, and I'm the audience, I pull the attention out of the audience on me. Then I ask them a question. Where's their attention go? Have you ever done that? I drive their attention back into their head. Let me see if I've ever done that. Or what was the best day in your life? Oh, let me see. What was the best day of my life? I've got to go back in my head when I get a question asked to me. Now, a couple ways to do this. First of all, don't just ask questions. The audience will get your message. You don't have to ask them if they got your message. If you give a good speech, tell a good story, they will get your message. Ways I ask questions, and I did this to you guys already. I said, who here grew up in a family? And I know most of you have, but I raised your hand and I got some hands back. I said, okay, good. Well, we got a few orphans here. Maybe this happened to you. Did anybody, when I'm in live seminars, I'll go, did anybody here go to school? I'll raise my hands and give people a chance to raise their hand, or they smile, and I acknowledge the fact that, okay, well, good. We got some people that I guess they're self-educated here. I acknowledge that. So it doesn't, asking a question, not allowing the audience to answer it, is, to me, it's like opening a window on your computer. It eats up the memory of the computer. If you got 50 windows open on your computer slows down. If I got 10 questions that I've asked the audience, I never allowed them to answer, it sort of eats up their memory, eats up their attention. Last thing I want to go over with you, and then we'll go into some Q&A, is the use of props. I have a simple rule. Props should appear when you need them and disappear when you don't. Remember, I've just talked about the attention. I want the attention of the audience on me. The biggest prop I've ever seen used in Toastmasters is a chair. And 99% of the chairs used in Toastmasters do not need to be in the speech. The person doesn't need to sit down. They don't need to do it. They don't need a chair on stage. But they put a chair on stage with them. Where is part of my attention in the audience? It's on the chair. I am now competing with my prop. I've seen ladders. I've seen horse mannequins. I have seen orange cones. I've seen a lady dump her entire purse out on the stage, and all my attention went, who's going to clean that up? On the prop, right? I mean, she went on with her speech, and I'm looking at the stage. I go, she's got 1 minute between speeches. That's a lot. Who's going to clean all that crap up? Totally stuck my attention on the prop. If you know my speech, I had a parking ticket, right? I'll use a business card I have here. I pulled it out of my pocket when I needed it. I put it back when I didn't. So my recommendation for props is the prop needs to add to your speech and needs to make a point. And you're better, if you're going to tell a story about driving your car, you can stand on stage and drive your car. And I've seen this time and time again where somebody sits down to drive their car. They don't have to sit down in a chair to drive your car. Just drive your car. But the prop should appear when you need it, disappear when you don't. I don't want to be competing with my own props. Okay, so I hope that gives you a couple things to look at in mastering your speech. And these are common errors I see all the time. So what I'd like to do, that's been about a half an hour, about 25 minutes. I'm going to go over one more thing. As I said, we got 30 minutes and we started, I got about another 5 minutes. One more thing I want to talk to you about is stage use. The stage is a major component is an assistant in your speaking. I'm going to try to stand up here and try to stay on here. If I'm speaking from over here and I'm talking about I'm at home and I go to work over here, work is always going to be here on the stage. Home is always going to be here on the stage. Okay. If I think I'm mirrored on this. If I'm talking that I'm going east to west, and I think this is right because I said I'm mirrored. If I go, I headed west to Los Angeles, you want to walk to the right on your stage on the thing. Maybe it's this way for you guys. I'm not sure. But anyway, you want to use your stage. So if I go, in my speech, I said, I left Indiana and I went headed west. I went to Los Angeles to start over. I walked like I was on a map over to Los Angeles, and I stood there. And then every place was located when I had a conversation. I have a conversation with my mother over here. I don't turn around and have a conversation with my mother over here, because in the audience's mind, my mother is over here. Okay, so you want to block your stage, or what we call holograph the stage. So you put specific things in it and you refer back to those specific areas. If you do want to have dialogue with someone and you say, well, I was talking to my father, so my father's here. And you don't do this. Don't go. I was talking to my father and I was asking these questions, and he said to me, because if I do this, where's my father? My father's back here, right? So if I'm talking to my father, step over here and go, and then my father looked at me and he said, go stand in the place you were just talking to. Now, these are little things that make a big difference in how your message gets understood by the audience. The other thing, when you're competing at a level, especially like in the World Championship, or if you want to be a professional speaker, if you're going up against other speakers, there are other speakers that are going to be doing this. And when you don't, it really stands out as an inexperienced speaker on stage. So it's a little thing that can make a big difference in just how easy the audience is able to understand the concepts you have in the use of the stage. And the last thing I'm just going to talk about are gestures. Video your speeches and look at what gestures are. I had a little gesture of a rocking arm. I had to actually do 3 speeches with my arm straight on my side because it was totally automatic and I didn't know I was doing it. We have things that we do all the time. We have different gestures that we will do, video them. The other thing is a gesture that I use that a lot of people don't use. I use facial expressions all the time. And I just did that. I use facial expressions all the time. I just do that naturally. But doing things that the person looked at me and I went, what? See, those things will communicate really well versus the person looked at me and I said, what? I don't understand. Okay, that's why I say you embody your entire message. Okay, that used up another 3 minutes of my 30 minutes. So let's get into some questions and answers, and let me address some things that you guys really want to talk about. So who's going to read the questions to me?
Julius, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I have a question. You're going to handle the QA session, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So
there's two things we can do. You can type them to Julia, or you can pick somebody to ask me a question. I just don't want to have to try to administer the questions.
Yeah, sure.
Just ask you directly.
All right. So, okay. So Tia Biliana, yes, over to you. You can ask your question.
Okay. Thank you, DTM Miller, for that wonderful presentation. My question is regarding how many times, or should the message of the speech be repeated throughout the story in the speech? I mean, like if I want to emphasize it and if I kind of weave it into different segments of my story, is it okay if I emphasize and bang on it and repeat it several times? Because some people are saying, don't repeat the message because it may be coming like too much. What do you think?
Great question. And this was an area I didn't get into. A couple things about your speech. Never, I'm sorry, was that word clear?
Yeah, never.
People never open your speech. Never say the message in the beginning of your speech. And this is something people do all the time. They come out, the most important thing that we have in life is truth. And then they try to tell a story. I know where you're going. This is like giving the punchline to a joke before the joke. The whole thing that makes the joke work, the punchline work, is the lead up to it. So you want to tell a story that involves the audience, emotionally connects with the audience, and the message comes out of the point in the story. Okay? Now, this is where I talked about telling and sharing. Don't tell the audience 50 times you should do this. Share with the audience how you applied this message in your life and the difference it made.
Yeah.
Share with the audience how you applied the lesson and the difference it made. You can do that several times. And then one of the things, and anybody who's been coached by me knows this is one of my sort of signature lines. I say at the end, never say, if you have a problem, you should do this, because you're assuming you're smarter than the audience. And I have a big thing of always maintaining a freedom of choice with the audience, so I want them to accept my message of their own free will, not because I told them to. So I say, you may know somebody who's struggling in this area. And if it's them, they'll go, oh yeah, I know them really well. But they also may know my daughter or my neighbor or my wife needs to hear this. And I go, give them this message, encourage them to, share this with them, encourage them in that way. And so what you do, and you empower the person to go put your message out in society. And if they need it, they will just give it to themselves naturally. But just to repeat on it, have the story deliver the message. And then if you want to repeat and drive home that message, share. Here was another situation I ran into, and this is what I did. And it worked beautifully. Then, my mother-in-law came over and blah, blah, blah. And we were having this argument and I did this and we get along great now. And you give different scenarios of your life of how you applied the lesson in your life. And then people go, oh, I could do that in this situation I have. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. You have another question.
BTM Guras, over to you.
Yes, Lance, my question is quite related to the question from Biliana. There have been times when world champions have had the title of the speech and the tagline and the message pretty much the same. For example, I see something. Would you recommend that strongly in order to get more efficiency, mileage out of the economy of your speech?
No, I don't think. Usually, when it's like Dana Janya, there were a lot of reasons that he won. It was a very powerful story. It related really well to the audience. On the thing, and he was sharing his humility, he was sharing his struggle in life, and that other people saw something in him, but they didn't know what it was, right? And it's like there's something in you, and everybody feels like that. There's something in them, and there was a relationship to it. But it wasn't the fact that, and this is, Dana Janya had incredible life force and life energy behind his speech. He filled that room when he spoke. Okay, so you can have your message or your foundational phrase or your tagline in your title. I don't recommend that because I feel it gives away. Most people don't do it well. Just so you know, there are hundreds of people that put their message in their title and their tagline that never make it to the World Championship. They fall out long before that, and people that actually make it up there have a better crafted speech, and they're not trying to just put the message multiple times like you're trying to hypnotize the audience. See, you got to believe your message. You got to really, I said that's life energy. You believe, you have conviction and passion for your message, and you're getting that across to them, not that you said it 3 times and it's a mechanical thing that the audience now gets it. But I believe that titles should not have the message in them. They should not give away the message of the speech. The title of my speech was The Ultimate Question. Nobody knew what that was. The question was, do you validate? That is the ultimate question. And of course it was a joke because I started off, it's like getting my parking validated, and then I change it to a simple thing anybody can do that would bring world peace if mankind did it to everybody, but no, I don't. Minaj was the other one that said, Ben less, pull more, or pull less, Ben more is what it was. That was the title of his speech. But the way it came, you had no idea where it was going until his mom told the story, and then it resonated back and forth. But most people do not do that very well. And they try to do it. It's more like a book report, like what I did on my summer vacation, and then, or my trip to Nantucket or something. And then this summer I went to Nantucket. Instead of saying, I didn't know where to go over to vacation, and it discovers he winds up going to Nantucket. It was a surprise,
Right.
So
anyway. the ultimate question, ouch, and do you validate can be 3 independent things, and the impact really, I mean, the economy of the impact or the efficiency of the speech really will not go down as I understand from you.
Not well, the ultimate question and do you validate, it's the same speech. Ouch is Darren LaCroix, and that was the title of his speech. But his speech wasn't really about ouch. It was that wasn't the message. His speech was actually about failing forward. is what his
No,
message
I
was.
didn't say ouch. I said cha-ching. Sorry. That
Oh,
was a
okay,
mistake.
okay.
Ching.
Well, the cha-ching part was just a simple little thing I did on how easy it is. How easy it is to validate. That was a way, instead of me saying, see, that's an example. Somebody can say, it's so easy to validate somebody. It doesn't, you don't have to work hard. No, I can just go cha-ching. And I just expressed how easy it is. It's just like stamping a ticket. That's how easy it is. And it gave a tie, it basically gave a thread to the whole speech, you know.
Thank you.
But that was the reason I put that in there is she stamped my ticket, boom, I'm validated now. That cha-chink, that's how easy it is. And then I just went cha-chink, cha-chink, and it gave the concept of just stamping a little validation on people, which resonated on how it gave a mental picture on how easy it was to validate somebody. Instead of trying to use, I remember I talked about use 50 or 100 words to say that, or go cha-chink. Cha-chink, all the powers behind that. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Who else is up here?
All
And
right.
thank you for the questions, because this is my favorite part. Go ahead.
So we have one more question from Saga Mastan.
Yes.
Yes, Sagar. Sagar, you were going to come in?
Yes, I just want to yeah. How do you say calm and relaxed, and authentic, like when you're speaking?
I didn't understand.
How come you're so
How do you
relaxed?
stay calm and relaxed?
Okay, I think the question is, how do you stay calm and authentic when you're speaking, if I'm not mistaken?
Okay. Okay, let me give you a little hint here. If you want to be calm and authentic on stage, you have to speak. And the simplicity is you don't become a better speaker by not speaking. And if you want to handle speaker nerves, the way you handle speaking nerves is getting on stage and speaking until you calm down. And I'm going to give you a couple little analogies on this. If you knew somebody who had not gone on a flight for many years and they had to fly someplace, do you think they might be nervous about getting on the airplane? Yeah, because they hadn't gotten on an airplane. They don't know how to get through security. They're nervous about it. They don't understand things. Up to COVID-19, I was flying 30 weekends a year. I could walk through security with my, half asleep and know exactly what was going on, how to put my bag in the overhead bin and the whole thing, because I do it all the time. So when you haven't spoken for a long time, you're nervous about speaking. The way you get over that is by speaking a lot. And what happens is by speaking a lot, making mistakes on stage, but speaking frequently, you will start to calm down. And the biggest thing on the authenticity, you can get my tips card off of my website. You can also, there's also all sorts of other training material on there if you're interested in it. But how to be authentic, I can't answer that in 30 seconds on something, but you've got to speak about things you care about. You got to speak about things that are real to you. You got to speak about lessons that you have personally learned in life and that you know to be true. And that is a bit of a journey to discover those. When I started, I didn't think I had very many. Now I've got thousands of them, but it's just because I've looked very closely at my life and I identify messages every single day of my life. I'm picking up more stories and messages because that's how I look at life every day. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Champion.
You're welcome.
For sharing your experience and tips and everything with us.